so important right now and such an issue here in the Commonwealth as well as across the country. I'm with the Center for Immigration Studies. As Lou said, we focus on studying the impacts of immigration on American society with the goal of providing lawmakers and opinion leaders with information on immigration's effects on our country from the perspective of trying to find and arrive at immigration policies that work for the national interest rather than for special interests. And any of you who are interested in our research can find it at www.cis.org. All of our publications are there. In particular, I focus on the operational aspects of immigration policy and have been studying and writing about sanctuary policies for a number of years now, and have obtained government documents about the impact of sanctuary policies. We have a map on our website that shows where all of the sanctuary jurisdictions in the country are located and what makes them a sanctuary, what their policy is, and the level of their obstruction of cooperation with ICE is on there for more information. We have 6 sanctuary jurisdictions that I've identified in Massachusetts, not counting any of the policies that may have been adopted very recently that I haven't had a chance to look at yet. But I think it's important to define what we're talking about when we talk about sanctuary policies. A sanctuary policy means different things to different people, but what I'm focused on is sanctuary policies that have an effect on federal immigration agencies' ability to do their job, to enforce immigration laws, and to accomplish their mission, part of which is to protect public safety. Some people say that there is no definition of a sanctuary policy. That's not true. Actually, federal law that was passed in 1996 does define a sanctuary policy, even though it doesn't name it as a sanctuary policy. What Section 1373 says is that no state or local jurisdiction can in any way restrict the communication or exchange of information between local officials and federal immigration authorities. And so that means you can't, if you're a police chief, you can't tell your officers that they may never call ICE to get information, that they may never tell ICE about individuals who are in your jail, and that you can't block them from cooperating with ICE. So it is a federal law. By my definition, a sanctuary jurisdiction, mirroring that, is any policy that deliberately attempts to interfere with immigration enforcement, whether it's an ordinance, a resolution, a policy, or a practice. And as I said, there are about 300 of them in the United States right now. In Massachusetts, those are Boston, Lawrence, Amherst, Cambridge, Somerville, and Northampton. Why are sanctuary policies such a problem? The reason is because you first have to understand that the vast majority of immigration enforcement done by ICE is focused on finding and removing that small fraction of the population of aliens, non-citizens here, who have been involved in crime or are causing problems in their community. It's a small fraction of the total population that's here illegally, but it can also include people who are here legally, like a student who commits armed robbery, or a guest worker who assaults someone, or even someone with a green card who commits a particularly serious crime. And of course, people who are here illegally, all of whom are potentially subject to deportation, but ICE's priority is now and has always been those, that small fraction of the population that's living here illegally that is a threat to the community or causing problems in the community. So when jurisdictions have sanctuary policies, They're deliberately trying to make it hard for ICE to do its job because usually for political reasons, they disagree with immigration enforcement, and they want to substitute their local judgment on who should be subject to immigration enforcement for the judgment of the federal government, which is actually responsible for and authorized to carry out immigration enforcement. What happens in reality is that sanctuary policies result then in the release of criminal aliens back to our community rather than putting them on a path to deportation. In 2015, I had been noticing the proliferation of sanctuary policies around the country, and submitted an information request to ICE to find out what the effect of that was, and found that according to ICE records from most of 2015, that sanctuary policies were resulting in the release of approximately 1,000 deportable offenders every month back to the streets of the communities. 63% of these individuals already had a serious criminal history before the arrest that led them to be identified by ICE at that time. So about 2/3 of them have a significant criminal history and are appropriately a priority for ICE to remove. 23% of them were arrested again after they were released by the sanctuary policy, within 8 months, in fact, of being released. And they had accumulated, after their release, an average of 4 additional arrests. So, again, the result of sanctuary policies is the release of criminal aliens back to the streets instead of back to their home country. And ICE was only able to reapprehend about 40% of the individual offenders who were released by the sanctuary policies. They make ICE's job much more difficult. In fact, that's their goal. And the problem with that, ironically, is it means that ICE has to go out into the community to do its job and make arrests at people's homes, at their workplace, on the street, perhaps in a courthouse. Not only can that be upsetting to others in the community, it can also be dangerous both for the ICE officers and for bystanders who may be nearby. So there is both a public safety impact and an operational impact on our communities. And of course, there is a human cost to sanctuary policies when people who could have been, should have been deported are instead able to remain in the community and commit additional crimes. These are needless victims that are created by sanctuary policies. One of the main, as I said, sanctuary policies are typically adopted for political reasons. They're not usually requested by police chiefs or sheriffs or any other law enforcement agency, because these agencies operate on a principle of cooperation with each other, as Sheriff Hodgson, I'm sure, will tell us. One of the main, I call it an excuse for having a sanctuary policy that is politically motivated, that has been adopted by pretty much every sanctuary policy that I've noticed, is that they feel that they need to have these policies so that immigrants in the community will feel comfortable coming forward to authorities. That sanctuaries allege that there is a chilling effect that happens on immigrant crime reporting in the community. The problem is there's no evidence that this actually ever happened or is happening now. Crime reporting, of course, is a problem in every community, and it's legitimate for law enforcement agencies to try to address it. But the best way to address it is not to suspend enforcement of our laws or to refuse to cooperate with the enforcement of those laws. The best way to address this issue would be to do outreach in the immigrant community. There have been numerous studies that have been done in Virginia. I've looked at the crime reporting data here in Boston and found that there actually isn't a chilling effect that happens when there is good, robust cooperation between local police and ICE. It's just something that is has been manufactured as a reason to have this policy. But let's take it at face value, just to think about it. I don't believe that there is necessarily a conflict between community policing practices and gaining trust of the community with cooperating with immigration enforcement. There are lots of ways to encourage and make it easy for people to report crime that we do here in the city of Boston. There are anonymous tip lines. There are officers on the force who speak the language of the community. They can have non-uniform personnel taking crime reports. They can do community forums and so on. And most importantly, explain what the purpose of immigration enforcement is and the purpose of their cooperation with ICE. And that, most importantly, that victims and witnesses to crimes are never a target for immigration enforcement unless those victims and witnesses are themselves criminals and a danger to the public. So, and I honestly really wish that the advocacy groups that are promoting sanctuary policies would tell immigrants in the community that victims and witnesses are not a target for immigration enforcement, instead of whipping up all of this fear of authorities that they have to do to justify the sanctuary policy. I was recently testifying before Congress, and with me on the panel was a woman who was a domestic violence advocate. And she said that she does not encourage the victims that she works with to seek out restraining orders against their abusers if they are here illegally. That to me is just terribly unfortunate for these victims, all for the political purpose of trying to create this mistrust between immigrants and authorities over the issue of immigration enforcement. Is very unfortunate. And let's remember, immigration laws are not some outdated, obsolete laws that don't deserve to be enforced. Not only do they protect the public and our national security, but they also protect opportunity for Americans and for legal immigrants, for jobs, particularly protect opportunities for those Americans and legal immigrants that are in direct competition for job opportunities. They also protect taxpayers from the costs of services to a population that's in the country illegally. Here in the Commonwealth, we spend about $2 billion a year in providing those services. So let's remember that, again, that immigration laws are important to enforce. The public expects to see them enforced, and it's only fair to legal immigrants to enforce our immigration laws so that the public can have confidence in our immigration system and sustain that immigration system that welcomes legal immigrants. So I will look forward to your questions, and I would like to turn over the mic